Without further ado, I just want to introduce one who really doesn't need any introduction in our corner of the world, which is a pretty large corner of the world. I want to introduce Sarah Allen, who's been with us a good number of years, has really upped all of our skill levels with DNA. There is no handout for this evening, so you can sit back and really enjoy the learning and enjoy the things that Sarah has to say. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah, and looking forward to it.
The format I'm going to do tonight is we're just going to do like a DNA overview where I put together some slides and they're not extremely cohesive, but they cover a lot of different topics about DNA that people ask me about. And we're going to talk about ethnicity estimate first, and then I'm going to open up for questions. So you can put your questions in the Q&A. And if you're going to ask a question about I ask that you tell me what company you tested at. Tell me what your ethnicity estimate says, like the category and the percentage. And then tell me your question, like why, what your specific question is about your ethnicity estimate. That way, when you put that all in the question, then I can give you the best answer. So we'll do that first. We'll talk about ethnicity estimate. We're going to go through a couple things real quick, and then I'll open for questions, and then we'll move on to DNA matches, and we'll do the same thing. The ethnicity estimate is one of the things that you get if you take an autosomal DNA test with Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, or 23andMe. So those are the four major testing companies that give you an ethnicity estimate. The big picture is if you tested at all four of those companies, or you tested at just two or three of those companies, they're all going to do their ethnicity estimate calculations a little bit differently. So you should expect differences. That's the main point of this slide, is that there's going to be differences between the companies. They may seem big to you, but it's probably just a matter of how they are analyzing your DNA and presenting it a little differently. And they might have a different reference population than the other company does. In fact, I'm sure they do. So we'll talk about reference populations in a minute. So generally speaking, and so I'm going to talk in a lot of generalities because we're really kind of breezing through a quick overview of the ethnicity estimate. So speaking in generalities, each company compares your DNA with the reference population in their database. So if you test at 23andMe, you're getting compared to the reference population that 23andMe has compiled. So a reference population is basically consists of people with a deep ancestry in one particular geographic or ethnic population. So for example, someone who is in the Irish reference population at whichever DNA company it is, so each of the companies has their own reference population, but somebody who would be in the Irish reference population would be someone who has all of their ancestors for at least 3 generations back on both their mother's side and their father's side from Ireland or from an Irish background. So that would be an example of deep ancestry in only one place, basically Ireland. And so that person could possibly qualify to be in the reference population at the DNA testing company. So they are one of the people that represents Irish ethnicity in that company. So then what the DNA company is going to do is they are going to compare your DNA against these reference populations. And if, let's say, 20% of your DNA most closely matches with the Irish reference population, then you will get a 20% Irish designation on your ethnicity estimate. So that is a very quick rundown of how you might get your percentages and your reference pop and your ethnicity regions. So 20% Irish is they're comparing you against their reference population in that DNA companies database, and 20% of your DNA, give or take a percent or two, is matching most closely with the Irish. And so that then they give you the 20% Irish. So this is what your results are going to look like, generally speaking. You're going to get a percentage, and you're going to get a country. And even though it looks like it's really a country, you want to kind of disregard that, but it's basically that area. So England and Northwestern Europe, Germanic Europe, Scotland, and Wales. So this is always an estimate. So that means it can be wrong. And the percentages are also an estimate. So that 38% there of England and Northwestern Europe, that's an estimate. Could be a little lower than that. It could be a little higher than that. It's kind of like an average or a mean. They do a lot of fancy math, is what Diane Southard would say, to come up with that 38%. You want to disregard, even though they're calling it Scotland, like 25% Scotland, you want to disregard your notion of where Scotland is today and think about historically where Scotland boundaries were, and they might have been different than they are today, and where people that have a Scottish background or Scottish ethnicity might have lived, which may not be geographically in today's modern Scotland. Certainly there were Scottish people that lived in today's modern England and in today's modern Ireland. So you got to think about those types of things as well when you're thinking about this, your regions. Now, updates. Some of you may be really hot to talk about this tonight. I don't know. But Ancestry updated their ethnicity estimates yesterday. So kind of late at night last night. So you may have heard about that. You may not have. But basically, Ancestry DNA will update their ethnicity estimates once a year. The other companies less frequently. So these are 3 reasons why Ancestry states that they update the results frequently. A, because they have added new reference populations, which helps them to hone in on your DNA better. B, because they have improved the way that they analyze data. And C, their updates take advantage of new technology, science, and data to make your results more precise. So this is why Ancestry likes to update about once a year. And I think it's a good thing to do that. Some of the companies are lagging pretty far behind and haven't updated in several years. And so it's just a difference between the companies, but I think it's a good thing. Okay, so interpreting the results. This is where I'm going to get very, very broad. Your results should be correct at the continent level. But if they give you a specific country or a region in that continent, it could be very wrong or off based on what you know from your tree. So from the continent level, Europe is a continent. So I believe, so we're going to talk about me a lot because I can only really show you my own DNA tonight. I believe that I'm 100% European in background. So not from any other continent, just European. So does my ethnicity estimate bear that out? Yes, it does. At all 4 companies that we talked about at the beginning, I am 100% European, basically 99 to 100%. So yes, my results are correct at the continent level. So I don't have a complaint about that. And in general, that is how it should be. These are the continents that most people agree on. I think there's some other like newfangled continents that they're teaching kids in school today, but these are the continents that I learned in school. North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica. So I don't think I've ever seen anyone that has Antarctica DNA, but there might be somebody that does. But anyways, these are the continents. So your DNA should be correct at a continent level. So if you have big differences in what you thought your DNA should look like, these are things that you should ask questions about. So if you have a different continent, so as I was just saying, I thought I should be 100% European, but what if I got 5% Asian? That would be a big difference. That would be a different continent than what I expected. And I would want to know where that 5% Asian came from, because it's not a mistake. The testing company is not going to get 5% of a different continent wrong. If it says I'm part Asian and as much as 5%, then I really am, several percentage points part Asian. And I would need to look into that, because that would be a surprise to me. Jewish DNA. So this works two ways. If you think that you're 100% Jewish, but you get results that say otherwise, or if you think that you're 100% not Jewish, but you get Jewish DNA results. Those are two things to pay attention to, because again, the DNA companies really don't get that wrong. That's not one of the things that they get wrong. So also sometimes if it's a region in Europe that you get a completely different region of Europe than expected, it could be telling you something interesting. So my example is you believe yourself to be 100% from the UK, which is in Northwestern Europe, but you have 25% Italian DNA, which is Southern Europe. That might be something to look into. So these big differences could indicate a family secret, such as an unknown family adoption, an NPE, which stands for a not parent expected, or a name change in your family that you didn't know about. These are the regions of Europe, just kind of to show you that as well. If you think, like I said, if you think yourself to be completely from the British Isles, it would be a big surprise to have Italian DNA or Spanish DNA or Greek DNA. That's a big difference. Okay, can you track down the mystery ethnicity? If you only have like 1% or 2% of a different continent, that's a small amount, and it might indicate that the ancestor that DNA came from is 5 or more generations back on your tree. Depending on, the records that are available and all sorts of things like that, you might not be able to track down exactly who that person would be. But you could see if other relatives of yours also got that DNA from that continent. And then you can say, well, cousin Bobby also has a little bit of Asian DNA. So we might have gotten it from that same side of the family that I share with cousin Bobby. And that might help you to sort of narrow it down a bit, but it might be challenging to figure it out. If you have a larger percentage of a mystery ethnicity, like say 5 to 10% from a different continent, if I turned out to be 5% Asian, then this should show up in my DNA matches. I should have DNA matches who are fully Asian, and I should have a number of them on my match list. And it should be pretty obvious that I'm getting these Asian DNA matches to people in Asia. And that would be a way of kind of verifying that ethnicity estimate was correct. I'd still have to find out how I was actually Asian if I thought that I was 100% European. That's a whole other thing. The Leeds method might work, but this is probably traceable back to a specific ancestor with research and expert DNA analysis. Just a word about African Americans. Generally speaking, African Americans should expect to have some African DNA and some European DNA. They may also be Native American, which will say perhaps North American indigenous peoples or something like that, or Native North American, something like that. African Americans could also be part Asian or part Australian also. But generally, you would expect them to be a mixture of African and European usually because of the slave trade. Hispanics or someone with a Mexican American or Central American background typically is going to be a mixture of indigenous peoples and European, but it's also pretty common for them to be part African and part Asian as well. So they are often truly very ethnically diverse. So it's kind of exciting to see somebody's DNA from that kind of background. Okay, questions about the ethnicity estimate. So, like I said before, if you have questions, try to include this information, which will help me to answer your question. Also, let's see here. Also, if you have a really long involved question, it might be better to send us that information by an email so I can look at your question in more detail and get back to you.
Joseph is asking his ancestry DNA is the company he tested with. Nigerian 29%, England, Northwestern Europe, Benin and Togo 16%. How can you tell which parent is which? England and Northern Europe, parent number 1, 11%, parent number 2, 6%.
So basically, he's saying that his England, Northwestern Europe is divided between the two parents, like 10% with one of them and 5% with the other. Is that kind of what it sounds like?
11% and 6, yeah.
Yeah.
10% and 5, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the question is, how do we know which parent is which?
Yeah.
Are you struggling with trying to divide your DNA matches into parent 1 and parent 2? Because you can do that by, finding somebody on the list that you recognize. And if, it's cousin Bobby on your mother's side and it says he's parent 1, then you know that your mom is parent 1. And so then you can go back to your ethnicity estimate and the parent 1 results in the ethnicity estimate, then you know are from your mom. So it's universal across both the matches and the ethnicity estimates. Once you figure out who parent 1 is, then that's who it is. And you can edit it then, and you can change it from saying parent 1 to saying maternal, if that's who it is, and then you'll have it labeled correctly so you don't have to do all this mental gymnastics to try to figure it out. Now, I'm not sure if I got to the heart of your question or not, but
well, Joseph did put a response to, I think, one of your initial questions, like, is that what you're asking? And he responded, yes. So
okay.
I'm going to think, Sarah,
right.
that you at least
took a stab at it.
were an assist along the way. Michelle, this may be the last one for this segment. Michelle says, I got a DNA sample from my younger brother. Ancestry Y was the test, and our first cousin, my heritage, was the test. Their fathers were brothers. Why do they have different haplogroups? I know that doesn't exactly go with ethnicity estimate, but trying to find our second great grandfather's family.
Okay. So her DNA at Ancestry was her brother?
Yes.
And then who was the person at MyHeritage?
First cousin.
I'm assuming male. She didn't say though.
Didn't say.
Yeah.
Well, she says their fathers were brothers.
Okay, yeah, their fathers are brothers. Okay, so first cousin, fathers are brothers. It depends. I'm trying to think if MyHeritage even gives you a haplogroup. Maybe she's thinking about 23andMe. I'm not sure that MyHeritage gives you a haplogroup. But there are, if you're trying to compare haplogroups, so let me back out of that and say whatever company it was, if you got 2 haplogroups but the 2 men tested at different companies, and it sounds like that's what you're saying, it's going to be kind of along the lines of they calculate the haplogroup a little bit differently. And so one company might be giving you a really broad haplogroup and the other one might be giving you a really specific one. And so they will look different, like, but their haplogroups are number and letter combinations. So it's like H115, it would be a broad haplogroup, but then maybe the other relative got tested at a more specific haplogroup number, and his is H115Y234. And so like there's more letters at the end of it, but they're basically the same haplogroup. Like the H is going to tell you that they're in the same family. And then if you kind of Google it and compare the two, you'll find out they're in the same, that one of them is just a higher level haplogroup and one of them is a more specific haplogroup, but they're in the same family. So it's not that they're really different as you think they are, but it's because you tested at you tested the 2 men at 2 different companies. And so it's just gonna, so that's what I suspect might be happening. But if one of them is getting like an E as the haplogroup and the other one's getting an R as the haplogroup, that is an incompatibility. And that would mean that even though the 2 men were brothers, they might have been half brothers and not sharing the same father after all, because they should have the same haplogroup. So we'd have to do more investigation into it. This is something you might send us an email about.
Yeah, you just read my mind, sir. I was going to remind our attendees that if we aren't quite 100% interpreting your question correctly, or you would like to follow up, please do send an email, and I'll put that in the chat again in a moment. Genealogy@acpl.info. We'd be so pleased to answer your question or devote a little more time to it. So I think we're okay with this segment, Sarah.
Okay.
So.
All right. So DNA matches. Why do you share DNA with your DNA matches? So this is the other part of your autosomal DNA. So if you got your autosomal DNA done, you're going to have that ethnicity estimate. You're also going to have a list of DNA matches. So why are these people matches with you? But basically, the short answer, and this is very condensed, is that you must share a set of common ancestors that you might call the connecting ancestor couple or the MRCA, the most recent common ancestors that you both inherited segments of DNA from. So this picture is my great-grandparents. And so I have some cousins on my DNA match list who also descend from that same couple. And so they're our connecting couple. They're our most recent common ancestor couple. And the reason that I'm matching with them is because both of us are related to David and Alice. That's who this is, David and Alice, David Allen and Alice Brown. So all the identical segments of DNA that you both have are added up by the testing company, and the segment size is measured in centimorgans, which is abbreviated cm. That's just the unit of measurement for DNA. And you get a total number of CMs shared with each match. So with a higher level match, let's say 75 CMs and more, you can often find the connecting ancestor couple by viewing your matches tree, looking at the shared matches, building trees, maybe for a match that has a kind of an incomplete tree, and collaborating with your matches. So some of the low matches that you get, like 10 centimorgans, it's oftentimes very, very difficult, if not impossible, to figure out who the connecting ancestor couple might be, because that could be from 7 or 8 great-grandparents. And I don't know many of my 7th or 8th great-grandparents on my tree. So 2 of the DNA testing companies are going to give you a hint about how you might be related to your match. So on your match page, the first example is from Ancestry. The second one is from MyHeritage. JM here, it says common ancestor over on the right under public link tree. So this is telling me that JM and I have a common ancestor that's in both of our trees. And so the company Ancestry is alerting me that this might be how I'm related to JM, and this is why I'm sharing DNA with him. Same thing with MyHeritage over here. Sherry, they call it a theory of family relativity. And they're saying that Sherry is probably my parents' third cousin, according to the theory of family relativity. And if I click on that, it'll show me exactly who the connecting ancestor might be. And that might be why we're sharing DNA. So this is kind of what we were talking about with Joseph. Ancestry DNA splits your DNA matches into parent 1 and parent 2. And once it does that, it's up to you to discover which one is which. So let's say you notice that your cousins on your mom's side are all listed as parent 1. Then you have basically determined, you cracked the code that parent 1 is your maternal side. You can edit it, and that will change parent 2 to paternal also. So then you'll have most of your matches sorted at Ancestry, and that's a big help, I think, to have it sorted. And there's 2 other categories. One is both, and that would be for like your kids and grandkids. They're going to be related to both sides of your family, so they'll say both. And unassigned are people that haven't been categorized for whatever reason. Ancestry says it's because there hasn't been an update in a while, but they will get to it. I have some people that are unassigned and they have been for a long time, but if I know who they are, I just go in and assign them. Again, you can change them to maternal or paternal. If your parents were closely related to each other or from an endogamous population, so if you're 100% Jewish, for instance, that Jewish people are endogamous, meaning that they're all distantly related to each other, basically, when you get far back on the tree. And so they might show a lot more matches as both because of the fact that their mother and father are probably distantly related. So it can kind of, those kinds of situations can kind of screw up your parent 1 and parent 2 designations at Ancestry. So this is kind of what it looks like here. These are some of my matches. You can see I've got a paternal one there. It says paternal because I changed it from parent 1 and parent 2. I edited it and said, this is my paternal side. This is my maternal side. Here's a both sides down here. Alicia and Jeffrey is unassigned. Okay, here's another question we get a lot. The DNA company does not know your relationship to your match. We got Jeffrey here, and it says, it seems very confident. It says, he's my 4th cousin, or my half third cousin once removed. Well, this is an estimate, and they estimate it based on the amount of DNA shared between me and Jeffrey. So that would be the 35 centimorgans here, and our respective ages. So they know what Jeffrey's age is. I don't, but I know what my age is. But basically, it's a lot more complicated than this. And this is an Ancestry match here. So if I click on this blue data here where it says 4th cousin or half third cousin once removed, it's blue, which means it's clickable. So it's a clickable link. So if you click on it, you actually get the entire list of possible relationships between you and Jeffrey. And you're going to be astonished by this. So he's not necessarily my 4th cousin or my half third cousin once removed at all. First of all, I get these predicted relationships. So there's 6 relationships there. Could be any of those, but they said they think those are the more likely relationships. So now we've got 6 likely relationships. But then over here on the right, there's more relationships. So down here, there's some more unlikely relationships, like this 3rd cousin twice removed. He doesn't show up over on the predicted relationships. This half 2nd cousin 3 times removed doesn't show up over there. So they're saying that those maybe are less likely, but there's still possible relationships between me and Jeffrey. So it's not as cut and dried as what the DNA company is telling you there. So you really have to investigate it yourself and try to figure it out by comparing your trees. Okay. Now, the leads method. If you're having trouble sorting out your DNA matches to a grandparent level, Maybe you have some kind of family mystery in your tree. So you're adopted, one of your parents was adopted, something like that, where you're unsure about part of your tree, but maybe you know the other part of your tree. Or maybe you know none of your tree and you're really starting at ground zero. The leads method is something that we recommend that people do. And I don't have time to go into how to do it. There is a great website. It's called danaleads.com. And that is after the lady who originated the idea of the leads method. And you basically go to this website, danaleads.com, and she has some tabs on the top, and one of them is the leads method. Then you follow the instructions exactly. What you're going to do is create a spreadsheet. You can create it in a spreadsheet program on your computer. You can do it on paper with a paper and pen. And the basic principle of the leads method is you're sorting your DNA matches out by grandparent. So you should have at least 4 groups by the time you get done. You may have more than 4 groups. You're ignoring the match's name. You're ignoring the matches, the tree of the match. And you're strictly sorting out your matches by the number of centimorgans. So you're only sorting certain matches that you share certain amounts of centimorgans with. And then you're looking at your shared matches with that person. So it's basically sorting out your matches by who they share DNA with. So it will not work out really well, again, if you're from an endogamous population or your parents are related to each other. The leads method may not work out for you. But this is what the leads method would look like if it works well. So this would be your spreadsheet. These are your DNA matches over here, the 1 through 15. And the color coding is what you're doing according to the instructions on Dana Lead's website. So in this case, the person's matches nicely divided into 4 groups, which we think probably are the 4 grandparent lines. But your results may vary. So you're going to read her website if you get only 3 groups, or maybe you get more than 4 groups. So you read her website, she tells you what to do in each of those situations. But if you do get 4 nice groups like this, these are groups of shared matches. So basically this blue group are person 1, 2, 6, and 8 are all shared matches with each other. And then this orange group, person 3, person 9, person 11, they are shared matches with each other, and so forth. And so this breaks out hopefully into your 4 grandparent lines. Now, let's go back to our person. If you recall, when we were talking about ethnicity surprises, and the person that I said that they thought they were 100% from the UK, a UK background, but they actually got a 25% Italian result. So that is a surprise. And like I said, those are kind of really different regions of Europe. And so it is something to kind of pay attention to. So let's say that person did the leads method on their matches. And when they got all done, they got the 4 grandparent lines, what appears to be the 4 grandparent lines. And they identified that column B, the blue matches, and column C represented their maternal grandparents. So this was maternal grandfather's side, this was maternal grandmother's side, because they recognized these matches. They looked at the trees, they said, oh yeah, those are people on my grandpa's side, those are people on my grandma's side. And then group D here was from the paternal grandmother's side. So again, they looked at these yellow matches and they looked at the trees and they said, oh yeah, those are my paternal grandmother's side. But where's paternal grandfather? So remember, paternal grandfather, they thought was a British man, but they don't have DNA matches to him. This purple group down here happens to be Italian in descent. So when they opened up the trees of these people, they were like fully Italian and they didn't recognize any of the names. And they were like, who are these people? So with that, this is kind of verifying that ethnicity estimate that that person got and showing that basically, since they did the Leeds method and they have DNA matches to 3 of their 4 known grandparents, the 4th grandparent, that would be the paternal grandfather, may not be who you thought it was. Biologically speaking, the man that was your paternal grandfather is probably Italian, and those 2 purple matches down there are matching to people in his family, whoever they might be. And you probably can figure it out. It would be some work, but so there's some kind of family secret that you probably unearthed, but the Leeds method has helped you really kind of hone in on which side of your family that mystery Italian came from. So I hope that that helps you with how you might apply the Leeds method to a mystery that you have in your tree. Okay. Now, just another word about shared matches. So when you have a match at any of the DNA companies, you should be able to see shared matches with that person. So this is what shared matches looks like at Ancestry. It's right over here. There's a tab on the match page and it says trees, origins, and shared matches. So you'd click on shared matches and you get a list of shared matches. So what is shared matches telling you? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe this will help you, maybe not. So let's say that the match that I'm looking at is my known second cousin. So my known second cousin, let's say that he is a descendant of that David Allen and Alice Brown that I was talking about earlier. They're my great-grandparents. So usually a second cousin is going to be a descendant of the same great-grandparents as you. So when I look at the shared matches between me and my cousin, these are people that share DNA with both me and with my cousin. So that there's going to be a whole list of people. Basically, that list of shared matches can be categorized into his, hers, or theirs. And this is terminology that's borrowed or taken from Diane Southard. She talks about this in some of her lectures, and it's a very helpful concept. So if they are his, that means that they are descended from only the husband, ancestors of the husband of that couple. So they're Allen matches, but not Browns, because the husband of that couple that I'm talking about, my first great grandparents, was David Allen. They'd be people that are matching further up the David Allen's tree. The hers matches are people that are descending from ancestors only of the wife. So that would be Alice Brown. So I will have Brown only matches. And then theirs are people that descend from the union of that couple. So basically the union of David and Alice will have had descendants as well. So some of those shared matches are going to be from the 2 of them. And then some of them are going to be only from David's side, and some of them are only going to be from Alice's side. So maybe that helps you understand what you're looking at when you look at shared matches. They really can only be one of those 3 things: his, hers, or theirs. All right. Now, questions about DNA matches or about other DNA topics. So again, kind of try to include the testing company that you used. If you're going to be talking about a specific DNA match, try to give me a little information about that person without giving their name, of course. And if you have a complex or a long and involved question, please send it by email.
I can tell you that there really isn't any new material in the Q&A. Just a couple here. what about writing your DNA into your family story? I'm not sure that that's quite on target, but one of our frequent visitors, Lois, she writes, I'm working with DNA matches on Ancestry. So that's the testing company. I know who the 4 grandparents are. DNA leads suggest we use 90
Okay.
to 400 centimorgans for this group. I'd like to work with the group or great-great-grandparent matches. Do you know what centimorgans I should use to get matches for great and great-great, or even further back?
Right. Yeah. You can use Leeds method down to 25 centimorgans. So you can keep
Okay.
going after you hit 90. You can go down to 25. I've done it. You're going to have a lot more groups. So you'll have more than the four groups because you're dividing out by great grandparents and maybe even great greats. And you'll have to, again, analyze your tree afterwards to see which set of great grandparents each group belongs in. But yeah, you can do it further down.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We have Myra asking, when you update your own DNA matches to identify the relationship, does it flow back to the company database and update the company database in some way, or at a minimum, put a marker in the company database? The company I have been primarily using is 23andMe. I see your smile.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So 23andMe, you can edit that tree that they give you. 23andMe gives you like an AI generated tree. And it can be really super wrong. I don't think their AI is very good. It's not very smart. But they have a way for you to edit that tree. But I think that's showing only to you. So your DNA matches can't see that tree. That is a 23andMe feature that's only viewable to you.
Mhm.
And if you change a match, I'm not sure if you can change a match to paternal or maternal at 23andMe or not. I kind of think you can't. But if you figured out a way to do it, I think that's just stored in your account and nobody else can see it.
Right.
So your match might be seeing, I've seen it where like on my side, so logged into my account, it says somebody's my half sibling. And then on their account, because it's a suggested relationship or a predicted relationship. And then on their account, it says that they're my aunt. And so we're not seeing even the same predicted relationships. When we go into our accounts, it's predicting different relationships. So, and that's kind of a problem that you run into with these matches. If they don't know you and you don't know them, they're saying, well, it says that I'm your aunt. And you're saying, no, it's saying on my side, it's saying you're my half sister. And then you kind of like talk past each other because the labels are different on each account that you're looking at.
Wow. Thank you for
So
that. I
kind
think,
of wild.
yeah. I think as you can see, since you stopped your screen share, we've covered all of the Q&A. Someone did post in the chat what was the lead method. I didn't know if you wanted to take a moment with that. One of our colleagues,
Yeah.
Alex, did post in a URL to the chat about.
Yeah. I do have, let me see if I can do this. Let me share my screen. So like I said, you want to go to the website that I told you. So it's danaleads.com. And basically you want to follow the instructions here. Up here where it says home blog leads method, you go here to leads method. And then she starts going through it step by step right here. The background, step-by-step guide. That's the one you want here, this first posting here. But
First
all
link.
of these, yeah, all of these are kind of flow out of each other. So if you do the first thing, then you can look at the second one, the second link, and so forth. But you want to start with this one here. And then she goes into great detail about how to set up your spreadsheet, or if you're doing it on paper, you know, same thing, how to colorize it and so forth. So that's what you want to do. And like I said, it's a method for a lot of adoptees use it. And a lot of people who have an unknown in their tree, maybe one of the grandparents is unknown, it would be really helpful for that as well, to just like sort out your matches into the 4 grandparent groups, and you can see the unknown grandparents side really easily after you get done.
Okay.
Okay, if that's the only other question that we had,
Yeah.
I can show everyone the new ancestry for a few minutes.
I think they would enjoy that.
Okay. All right, so I have not studied this very much. So you and I are looking at this at the same time, basically. But this is what the Ancestry DNA update that they did last night looks like for me. So they used to call it your ethnicity estimate right here. And so now they're calling it Sarah's 7 ancestral regions. So they've tweaked some of the terminology, basically. But we still got the map of the world here, and it's color coded and so forth. And that's all the same. So then you got your percentages. And my percentages have changed, and I can go down and show you what they were and what they are now. But the big thing that they've added these stories. And these, John Beatty and I were looking at this earlier today and chuckling over it, because we don't quite get the point of them. But the stories are not what I would consider important. But if you click on it, it basically tells you a little bit about Germanic culture. That's what the 4 stories are. So if I click on 4 stories, it takes me down here. Region stories uncover new insights about Germanic Europe and what makes people from here unique. And so I can click on this quilting, for instance, and I don't know what that's going to tell us. Okay. It's going to tell us that quilting has been an art of necessity in Germanic Europe. So it's basically just kind of a little story about how people in Germanic countries like to quilt. Like I said, I don't get it. I don't get why that's included there, why they're linking me to it. Everybody, I think, all the backgrounds that I'm from were quilters. So, and they had to quilt because they needed to have blankets, you know, to keep them warm at night. So that was it's a weird little addition that they just made. So right there, they link you to these stories. So the stories are basically not about your DNA at all. They're about that region. So they're little stories about the region. This is new. So these are not, well, I don't think these are communities. Like they used to have what they call communities. I think these are regional breakdowns of my DNA. So the big category is England and Northwest Europe. And then the Channel Islands is a part of England and Northwestern Europe. And so they're saying that my DNA may be linked to the Channel Islands. But when I click there, I get this. It shows me where the Channel Islands are. That's Guernsey and Jersey. But I think the major part about this is your connection right here. Connection strength is moderate. If I hover over that, there's a little explanation of that. The more DNA you share with people in our Channel Islands reference panel, the higher your connection strength is. Moderate can mean a connection many generations back, and very strong can mean a more recent connection. So if I had a very strong here, I would be interested in that. Many generations back, I'm thinking, 10, 15 generations back, I could be partially from the Channel Islands. I know of no ancestor of mine that was from the Channel Islands. My people that were English came to this country in the 1600s. And where I know that they lived in England, some of them I do not know where they lived in England, but others of them I know they lived in London, which is not the Channel Islands, and East Anglia, which is not the Channel Islands. So this is mildly intriguing to me, but I don't think it's really that relevant to my genealogy at this point. I'm not back that far. I don't know if I'll be able to get back that far. It's saying that my mother has this region as well. My paternal aunt has this. So basically my mom's side and my dad's side have this, and my mom's brother has this. So it does pull up and tell you how many some of your higher matches that have this too. Now, if I click on this learn more, I think this might dead end us. I think I was clicking on that earlier and it gives me a bad link, but maybe it's going to work this time. Yeah, see? So it's new on the Ancestry website. Okay, here we go. So it is working. It's just a little glitchy. So they're saying that subregion is a more specific place you're connected to in a region. We're adding subregions using cutting edge science. So basically, they're saying that they've got some cutting edge science that's adding these subregions, and they've got a whole explanation how they find them. So they're assigning subregions by finding short segments of matching DNA between you and people with deep roots in specific geographic areas. So I think they're talking about the reference panel again. So maybe they have a Channel Islands reference panel and I'm matching some small segments with those people. I think that they might be looking at too small a segments here because I think this is way, way back in my tree. Now here they have, why do I have subregions that aren't in my family tree? So that's my question. Since these shorter segments can show distant connections from over 1,000 years ago, your subregions may include places or populations not yet recorded in your tree. So here they are basically saying what I was suspecting was that this could be from 1,000 years ago. So it's kind of like cool, like, oh, look, they can predict that I had an ancestor that was in the Channel Islands 1,000 years ago. But on the other hand, it's not going to help me much with my modern day genealogy. Is my take on it. So that is, so if you're like me, you probably have some of these new subregions here, and you can kind of take them and read up all about it. So here is where you can see what changed from the last update. So I have scrolled all the way down almost to the bottom of my ethnicity update. And so this is going to show you what your previous ethnicity estimate looked like. Here's where they explain your DNA doesn't change, but our knowledge does. And so they have new discoveries and they update your results. So this is my old results, July 2023, and this is my new one. And then they tell you the percent change. So I'm 10%, I gained 10% in Germanic. I gained 1% in Scotland. I gained about 5% in England. I lost Wales. I gained in Central Europe. Lost Sweden, lost the Baltics, which I'm not surprised, lost Irish, and lost a little bit of my Balkans. So there you can see, and then down here, they explain it even more. How is it calculated? Why did it change? How do the updates improve? And so forth and so on. So there's a lot of good info here that you can click on and read all about this. And I would, if you have a lot of like burning questions about it, just read through all these screens, because Ancestors really put together a lot of good information that you could kind of piece together, like what's happening and why certain things are the way they are on here. So it's interesting. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to look at it real closely, but that is the news from here, I guess. So I'm going to stop sharing.
I really like
And
what you said, Sarah, at a general level. If I can paraphrase, it's one of my mantras, and I loved hearing you say, take time to investigate, take time to play. When you arrive at a new data set, spend the time to look around. It is interesting that the change is all the way at the bottom, where you can compare what yours used to be and what it is now. So really, really appreciate that. There is one question that was added to the Q&A. I don't know if you can see it, from Katrina about her grandfather.
okay, yeah. Mhm.
She says, my grandfather was illegitimate. I used both Ancestry,
Mhm.
where I tested, and My Heritage, where I transferred DNA. I have used leads and have confidently identified literally thousands of shared matches. No matter what I do, I cannot identify any matches from my grandfather's parental line. Does this suggest that he was the last of his line and his father had no other children or siblings either? I am working with the hypothesis he was the child of a priest.
I don't know. Without seeing what you're looking at, it sounds like you've done leads and you have matches. But are you saying that they're all for the grandfather's mother? Or because you should have matches to the grandfather's father's line? They're just, so they may just be very small matches.
We are not hearing you anymore, Sarah, but we are close to at time. So all week long, gremlins have visited our institution in the Genealogy Center. I think that we have really learned a lot this evening. Of course, Ancestry would update moments before a program like this. Really appreciate, Sarah, you walking us through those possibilities. We do really strongly urge you, if you still have questions, or if we weren't able to get to the very last question, please email us and we will respond to your question at that time. Also, if you are encountering other questions about DNA or anything else with your family history, with your discovery of your family story, please feel free to email us at genealogy@acpl.info. So thankful for you joining us this evening. Take time to play with new databases, new search results, new estimates, new results from Ancestry. Explore and see what new enlightenment you can find about your past, about your family. Until next time, which will be coming up soon. Wonderful to have you with us. Continued success in your genealogy journey, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks.